Rev up your engines! Alright, everybody knows I'm not a big Silverado fan, but this guy has a 2009 Silverado V6 that he bought, and he wants to know, will it last a couple more years so then he can get rid of it and get a Toyota? Because prices are too high. Now, he paid $7,000 for it with 104,000 miles, and now it's got 122,000 miles on it. If you're thinking about one of these, you know I'm not a fan. This is an '09. It's a little bit older. They were a little bit better made then. It's a V6 engine. He doesn't tow. He doesn't even fill the bed with all kinds of heavy crap. He said, like I do with the Matrix, haul stuff for his yard and things, nothing major. Strangely enough, he owned the Matrix before this and regrets getting rid of it, but what can you do? As you can see, this is just a V6 engine. Even with around 120,000 miles on it, it's still running good enough. It's not made for pulling heavy weights. It's not made for hauling beds full of sands and gravel and stuff, but he isn't using it for that. So, with the prices as crazy as they are, he's thinking, will this last another 2 years? Well, we're going to go through and see if it will. Now, to start out, don't think 6 means economy. He admits he drives like an old man. This thing, 15 miles a gallon, driving it around. It's a truck. It's a big, heavy truck. Got a lot of room. It's going to get crap gas mileage no matter what engine you put in it. That's just a fact. It runs good enough. He's not worried about that, and he realizes, hey, that's the horrible gas mileage. I mean, he went from a Matrix that was getting 30-something to this thing. So, you know, he says he's probably going to go back to the Toyota if the crazy market goes down and he can get another vehicle. But he wants to make this last a couple of years. He's had it 3 years in August, but he's wondering about the transmission. We're going to analyze the whole thing, show you what to look for if you're thinking about buying one, or maybe you own one that's got problems. You want to see, gee, is that a big deal or not? So here we go. As you can see, the molding was put on with cheap tape glue all the way around. But as I told him, no big deal. Get some JB Weld quick, mix it up, hold it in, put clamps, C-clamps to hold it overnight. In the morning, it'll be on there solid. The stuff works good. That's minor stuff. Now, he's worried about an oil leak under the vehicle, so let's crawl under there. So let's get under this thing and see what's leaking. Now, you can see, this is Massachusetts, so the frame has seen better days. It's still relatively solid, but in a few years, it'll start rotting away. Though, 2 years, I think it'll still hold up for 2 years, because when I hit it, it's still solid enough. Now, I can see the oil leaks here. There's the oil. And where is it leaking? It's leaking between the engine and the transmission. That means the rear main seal of the vehicle is starting to go out. Now, he checks his oil regularly, and he really doesn't have to add hardly any at all. The rear main seal is on the back of the crankshaft, and the transmission bolts onto that. That's why the oil's leaking between the engine and the transmission. It's just starting to leak. Now, in this case, he can do what I always do. You get some AT205 reseal. When you change the oil, you add a bottle of that. That rejuvenates the rear main seal, and generally it won't leak at all. But it's not like it's a big deal, because one, it hasn't even dripped on my garage yet, and since he doesn't really have to add oil, it's such a small amount. But I would put the AT205 reseal in it for one reason. That rejuvenates it so the leak won't get worse, because it can get worse over time. It's typical on these. A lot of these engines used a different type of seal, a new type of Teflon seal, and they often leak. It was another one of GM's brilliant ideas of making cars cheaper, that we'll put this thinner seal, it costs less to make, and it doesn't work as well, but it's not that big of a deal. Even if it was dripping a little bit. So you add oil to the engine. He wants to get 2 years out of it. I can't see that stopping him from getting 2 years out of it. Now, we're going to take it for a road test. Before that, I'm going to hook up my computer and see what general shape the whole vehicle's in. So here we go. It's the think car. We got it plugged into the dash here. We have the key turned on so the idiot lights are on. So here we go. Intelligent diagnosis. We have success. It knows what it is. It read the VIN number. So we'll do diagnosis. There are crazy sounds coming out here. While we're waiting, check it out, old school. It's got a hand window crank. Whoa! You don't see too many of those anymore. A blast from the past. Boy, smart scan. Scan the whole thing. Here we go. Even though it's an older car, still got a lot of stuff at scanning. Check it all out. Now, there's a lot of green stuff, but there's a few red stuff. We don't really care about the theft deterrent module, the remote door lock receiver. He doesn't really care about that. He doesn't really care about the AC. He wants to see something that's going to last or not. So the ECM is the only one that really has information on it. So first we'll read the fault code. And the code is brake switch circuit high voltage. His brake lights are working, so who really cares? The work truck for him. So let's look at the actual data. and we'll read the data stream. For the color-coded, blue is normal. We'll start looking at some interesting information here. Gonna see where the injectors is. They're close enough. Bank 1 is 4.10, and this is 4.0, 3.9. They're a little bit off, but they're close enough. You're never going to get perfection in a car that's this old with 120,000 miles on it. I can feel a slight jiggle in the steering wheel, a little lumpiness from the engine at idle, but nothing outrageous. Now this, you see, is pretty typical. The long-term fuel trim for Bank 1 and Bank 2, it's adding 5.469 fuel on Bank 1, and it's adding 7% fuel on Bank 2. So in this particular vehicle, I would advise running a fuel injector cleaning through the system. It's running lean like that. It's often, the fuel injectors are a little bit dirty. They've probably never been cleaned. Listen for vacuum leaks, could also have a vacuum leak, but these figures are more often dirty fuel injectors, a fuel filter that probably is a little clogged and needs replacing. You can see running here, the short-term fuel trim is even less. It's still adding, but it's adding just a little, 0.7, 2.3, 0.7, 1.5. Obviously, the Bank 1 is running a little bit leaner than the Bank 2 because it's adding a little bit more fuel than the other bank. Now, he was worried about the transmission, so let's look at transmission data. First, we'll just whip through them all, see if they're all blue. So they're all blue, they're all within specs. So there's no bad data there. So before we take it for a road test, we'll check for vacuum leaks. Maybe it's got a vacuum leak, it'll make it run lean, but I kind of think not. You can hear the alternator's groaning a little. It's the original one. Eventually it'll go out. Idling smooth enough for its age. So let's take it for a spin. Oh, it is a big old truck. So it'll go over my bump here with no problems at all. I really don't have to slow down. You're gonna feel it because it rides like a big old truck. So far it shifts pretty smooth. And here's the bumpy part. You know, you expect a bumpy ride in a pickup truck. It's old, it's got the original shocks on it. Nothing to worry about. It handles fine. It's not dangerous. Get on the road and check out two things. One, does it shift okay? And two, does it have enough power with the 6-cylinder instead of the V8? Well, we got time. Here we go. Step on the gas. Not outrageous, but it gets up and goes. It's got plenty enough power. But now we'll check the transmission going slightly uphill. All right, we'll see how it shifts with a little load on it. Just nice and smooth. Really? For its age, it's in excellent shape. It's up on the gas. It downshifts. Yeah, maybe a little bit rough downshift, but it's an old truck. Going uphill, no problem. It's just not chugging or lurching. Shifts perfectly fine. The chair's not made for hauling heavy loads or towing heavy weights, but he does neither with it. It's just his truck for getting around in. There's really nothing wrong with his truck for what he paid. He's got 20,000 miles out of it so far. So what do I think? You might be surprised. You know, I'm not a GM Silverado fan, but this is an 09 when they built them better. It's got a 6-cylinder engine that still runs perfectly fine. The gas hogs, he gets 15. That's just how these things are. If he had a V8, he'd get even worse gas mileage in the thing. The rear end's solid, transmission shifts good. He should have no problem at all getting another 2 years out of it. If somebody brought me this truck today and said, I'm thinking about buying it, I would have gone through it and I would have said, I'd buy it if that's what you want. You got to understand, like with him, this isn't something to pull heavy loads with. It's not something to load with rocks and sand in the bed. It'll wear things out too fast with a little bitty engine and a smaller transmission. For a knock-around truck to get you where you're going, this is not a bad deal because you want to price an F-150 or a Toyota Tundra, the sky's the limit. He only paid $7 grand for this thing 3 years ago, and it's still going. So he got a good deal, and if somebody was looking for a truck today, you could find something like this. As I said, it's a gap truck for him. He said he wants it to last a couple of years, and he wants to get a Toyota and get out of trucks because he's tired of the bad gas mileage. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.